Eli, I read your essay 3 times. You used the word request 11 times in the essay. Did Susan Lake receive any of the names that were redacted, or did her requests go unfounded?
She did receive requests. I did not get the number of times that she received the unmasking requests, but it was described to me that she would often put in the request after seeing an intelligence report, and she would get it within that day. So, yes.
Okay, yes, she did. That's a very important statement. And, of course, I meant Susan
And I
Rice.
want to add a note of clarification. Please. That there were dozens of requests, but as far as I know, there were not dozens of individuals, and there's a difference there. Someone's name can come up more than once in these reports, and, we're still kind of waiting to get the full tally on that.
I understand, Eli, that this is going to go back and forth, pick your TV network, pick your political debate. But what I find fascinating, Eli, is a single sentence where counsel, I will use the phrase general counsel, tells the young Trumpite to stop doing this. Expand on that. What did you learn about the Trump administration's effort to contain the actions of their younger staff members?
That's not the way to do that. I would just really stress on this show that the staffer who did that has got a very important job, and it was in his remit to do this kind of review. It's the National Security Council's director on intelligence, and in some ways it's sort of, you could say, the classified secretariat. That job is very important. It's not uncommon for someone to do this kind of work. The reason, and by the way, my understanding is that the staffer, Ezra Cohen-Watnick, complied with that request as well, and I think this had to do with the fact that they believed that this was something that was worthy of investigation ultimately by Congress, and they did not want to have, that chain of evidence or inquiry in any way sort of tainted. They wanted to make sure that the evidence could then be presented. But that was not necessarily meant to be, kind of a warning shot or anything like that. And also I would say, I understand that it was entirely authorized for him to do that review. That's another really important point to get out there.
Let me give you an open question. What would you like to see from Senate Intelligence, House Intelligence, or the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Well, at this point, I think that what we really have here, because I think that it is a low bar to get the unmasking of U.S. persons, I think that there needs to be more reforms to the law and the process to make it harder to get this kind of information if it's not connected to things like a pending cyber or terror attack or an important question of foreign intelligence. Of course, in this case, there are kind of competing issues here because we know the FBI had an ongoing counterintelligence probe, and that would be absolutely important for the National Security Advisor and the White House to know about and have information about it. But if the standard is, I need to know this U.S. person's identity because it helps me better understand the intelligence, that is such a low bar. I think it is prone to abuse, even if it's not illegal.
Eli, it's Guy in London. Where does this leave the tweets of March the 4th that came from Donald Trump?
Well, I think this review began, I'm reporting the review really began before that tweet. I have been asking my sources and other people around as much as I can, was there some sort of clever strategy behind this tweet from Trump? Because you could argue that even though he has suffered a lot of political attacks for it, when he made that tweet originally, he sort of scared up James Clapper to go on television and say that he had seen no evidence of collusion, which was helpful to him on the Russia story. And in some ways, it did bring political attention, or maybe spurred the House Intelligence Committee chairman to focus on this issue of unmasking, which is now very much front and center, which I think means that there are really kind of 2 investigations at this point. You could argue that politically that's also good for the White House. But I keep coming back is that really this was, a kind of Trump reading Breitbart, and getting a notion in his head. It was not accurate in the sense that there wasn't a legal wiretap of Trump Tower.
Yep.
It is this more technical issue of unmasking, and that it really wasn't any more complicated than that. Which is to say that it wasn't part of, a very clever strategy to play possum, get his critics to go out on a limb on something, and then cut it off. Even though it may end up being that all of the furious denials about that were, kind of true literally. But when you look at this question of unmasking, there was a substantive issue. There was sort of behind what Trump was getting at. But I don't think that was intentional or deliberate.
Eli, how do those tweets sit now? Do they represent a risk to the president?
I don't think there are many people who are serious in government right now that are happy about some of these tweets from Trump. There was a fascinating testimony last week in the Senate Intelligence Committee from a former FBI official who actually said that there were Kremlin kind of, gray bots or people that would push this fake news on social media that were targeting the president's Twitter account when they knew he was online. So that's pretty scary, especially considering we know that, Trump in the past has, basically signed off on or tweeted or put forward fake news, whether it's about Ted Cruz's father being involved in the JFK assassination or the birth certificate controversy with Barack Obama, which obviously was totally fake news.
Well,
so that's, yes, it's of concern.
Eli, this morning, Ms. Rice looks very lonely. How should President Obama react? How should the president and the Obama administration react to your essay and to the requests made by Ms. Rice?
Well, at this point, I reached out to her. I know that other journalists have reached out to her. I think we need to hear from her. I'd like to know how she should talk about this activity, even though it's getting into a classified realm, but as best she can, she should say, why she was asking for the identities of these U.S. persons in reports that would have related to the Trump transition, what she thought she was doing, and maybe explain herself. I have not yet heard that she's going to be called before any committees, although one could probably expect that, knowing how these kind of investigations go. And so maybe she would, at the advice of counsel, need to, keep her remarks brief. But, it's always worth, I think we haven't heard from her. She has a right to explain her side of it and defend herself. And I, did my best to get that side of it. And, now let's hear, her explanation. Why did she do it? And does she think she did anything wrong? Or, explain it. And then we can scrutinize those answers, just like we do with all kinds of other investigations.